going to do is because I don't want to eat into Nell's very valuable time, because we want to give her as much airtime as possible. So I'll do a little quick introduction. I have been speaking a lot about trust over the past couple of years, and more in particular, a lot of it came through during COVID, and where we felt that trust literally came at a much higher premium than even before. And to me, it's the invisible glue that keeps things together. It's become even more at a premium than ever before. And COVID has given us that level of a new look at trust and the impact of trust. And we'll talk about the future of trust and how it's becoming more and more significant. Now, social capital, this is an interesting concept which became really evident during the COVID crisis, where the whole philosophy of social capital is participation, network, belonging, reciprocity, engagement, all really linked together with trust. And this is the reason why we in Dubai, for example, are doing really well with COVID, because there's a lot of investment into that social capital by the government, by the people, and wherever in New Zealand it's the same thing. In many other countries it's like that, and I think that social capital is extremely important. The other thing, which is also something that is instigated by the trust, is collective intelligence and consciousness that came together during COVID, and that united our power of science, technology, and business, and we really pulled it together and tied it together with trust. And I think this is something else we can work on and develop within this particular initiative that we have. Trust used to be very local, and then over time, over the last few hundred years, as large institutions came together, it became very organizational. So we started trusting a bank or trusting a company. So it became organizational trust. Now it's on platforms and networks. So the whole philosophy of trust is also evolving. Nell Watson, she's a researcher, she's a futurist. She is an expert in technology and machine learning. She's an advisor to great organizations and institutions all over the world. We are genuinely privileged and honored to have her here.
And that was a beautiful talk. I really loved the sentiments that you put in there. And it's true. Trust is something in increasingly short supply in our world today. And one of the reasons for that is that technology is accelerating at such an incredible pace. It is often becoming bewildering. And there are many questions about how we retain trust in technology and how we put some of our humanity into technology to make that technology more humane, more responsive to human needs. One of the most bewildering technologies in our world today is artificial intelligence or machine intelligence. And it's all about making sense of our crazy world. There are many different correlations in our daily lives. Some of them are kind of obvious, like tall people tend to have larger hands. Some of them are more difficult to understand. We might have an intuition about something in our gut, but not be able to necessarily express why we feel that thing or why we have that vision of what might come true in the near future. But machine intelligence can help us to find these correlations and sometimes even to express why they are so. In essence, we have today machines which can help us to make sense out of chaos and to automate the ineffable, those things that we might know or feel, but find difficult to put into words or to describe in a mathematical equation. These technologies as well can help us to design for the future, to do more with the resources that we have. They can help us to optimize a design to be extremely efficient and then to fabricate it with no extra marginal cost using things like 3D printing, additive manufacturing. We can also use these kinds of prophesying techniques, if you will, to factor the sequence of construction to ensure that construction occurs in the most efficient way and that an installation can become useful right from the very beginning in a way which otherwise would be very challenging for human beings to factor all of those very complex and chaotic elements. The price of access to these technologies has been absolutely slashed in recent years. Not only is hardware becoming so much more sophisticated, but at the same time, we have become very good at optimizing these systems so that they run much faster, using less memory, and require less training time. Now, the most famous of these kinds of models is GPT-3, which some of you may have heard of. This has an API, an application programming interface, basically a doorway or portal to which you can send requests and get an answer back in a very short period of time. And that is also democratizing access to these technologies, because we don't need to run this very complicated software package. All we need is a simple line or two of scripting, and GPT-3 can do the rest. These models are now being used by big tech companies all around the world, and it's transforming their businesses, and with it, our personal and professional lives. The world is also becoming smaller. The price of getting to orbit has been slashed, and now there are sophisticated networks of satellites all over the world, which are connecting us in new ways never possible before. At the same time, AI is helping us to do more with less. Here we have two video streams which look pretty similar to each other in quality, and yet the one on the right uses 1,000 times less bandwidth. These technologies are helping us to build new institutions, those which are stronger because they are decentralized. There are fewer points of failure. There are more eyes watching the ball and being mindful of any potential corruption or simple error. These technologies can also help us with bureaucracy. They can take a very complex piece of legalese and turn it into plain language, turn it into something that anyone can understand, things which are accessible to all in potentially any language. Questions, however, may remain about what this means for human beings. In a world where machines are so capable, are we about to get the boot as human beings? Are we going to be displaced? Generally speaking, for the majority of people, I would argue, no, that's unlikely to be the case. Machines are here to help us. Machines are here to do the heavy lifting and to enable us to get on with the things that humans are best at. Those high touch things, those relationship-based things, those trust-based things, right? Because we trust people. We don't trust machines so much. But if we have a good relationship working with a person, that builds trust. And trust is an inherent part of branding too. Automation doesn't replace jobs, at least not unless those jobs are extremely simple. And those kinds of jobs tend not to be very fun or rewarding. Automation replaces tasks. And it means that managers now have to think not in terms of jobs so much, but in tasks. A task needs to be done. Should it be done by a human or should it be done by a machine?
All these amazing developments that you were just talking about and the enormous amount of biases that we have to deal with, and the entrance of algorithms in boardrooms to help board members to make decisions and bring our hyperconnectivity into the equation. I come more and more to the conclusion, should we ever allow, as far as we can oversee it, these kind of algorithms into the boardroom? So now we have a kind of a leadership, I would say, agenda point that we as seriously have to discuss as board members. Are we going to do that? Because of the biases, we as human beings, we cannot oversee it. And per definition, the decision that we are making based on the information that we get of these bias systems is per definition wrong. What would you advise us, me as a leader, other people on the call here as a leader, what to do? And my last remark that just confirms what my fear is here. Fear is probably a bad advisor, but anyway, is the work that Stuart Russell did in Human Compatible. If I bring that in this discussion, what would be your advice? And I know that I make it very complicated for you, because it is complicated.
Huge capabilities from machine intelligence, which could make a massive benefit for business decisions and business intelligence. For example, some of the optimization of construction sequence examples that I gave earlier, or the ability to make predictions about what a market is going to do in the future, or what competitors might be aiming for in the future. All kinds of things that we ourselves as human beings might have intuitions for, but find difficult to convey that to others. I think that's tremendously valuable and will become increasingly embedded within all kinds of management and business processes. However, as you quite rightly pointed out, there are dangers of this. Firstly, in the case of error or bias, or some form of disproportionality, but also something called automation bias. And that's where people trust technology too much. Well, the system said this, so it must be true, right? No, not necessarily. Sometimes the system is fallible. And this may not come to light for a while. It may seem as if the system is correct or fully trustworthy, because it gets some basic things approximately correct. And if we want this system, which we might have invested a huge amount of time and effort in acquiring, if we want it to work, we will probably believe that it does. And perhaps we might invest too much trust. So my recommendation would be to experiment with these systems, but to be mindful of automation bias. And if you're going to trust something, if you grow to trust it, trust but verify. Always be mindful that the system might have a misapprehension about something, probably because it may lack the full context of a situation.
I'd also like to recognize and welcome Dr. Wada Abbanim Al-Hashmi. He has joined us a few minutes ago, and he'll be talking to us about corporate ethics as the lead. He's done a masterclass on that recently, and he'd like to share some of his ideas and thoughts on that. So Dr. Wada, welcome. Good to see you, sir.
Yes, nice to see you. Thanks a lot, Tariq. So as Tariq said, I'm the chairman of the Platform for Connected Leadership. I'm a senior director here at Enoch, and I've been with Enoch for about 24 years now. I'm a board director in various organizations, and I'm also a fellow of the Board of Directors Institute in the GCC. So I'm going to be presenting really an experiential approach on this business ethics and conduct. Who I am is someone who started his career as a consultant actually before joining Enoch. I worked as a consultant for about a year and a half. Then I joined Enoch in the refinery, and then I've taken various different roles: officer, coordinator, advisor in EHS, then the group EHS manager. I became senior director for sustainability operational excellence for a while, for about 2+ years, and then I became the senior director for logistics and marine assurance. I have several qualifications, fellowships, and I also, besides being the honorary chair for the Energy Institute in the Middle East, I'm also the chairman of the Platform for Connected Leadership, and various other things. And so I've worked in various different organizations, for-profit, NGOs, and sort of industry forums in boards. My interests are sort of research, mainly technical governance and theology, and I like doing a lot of reading and writing and swimming. I'm like clay shooting. One of the main benefits of cultivating an ethical work culture to an organization, because it must make some good business sense, right, to do this. So organizational resilience and reliability are key features of a sustainable business model. So we know a lot about sustainability, ESG, etc. for organizations. So very important to have that. Organizations that don't have an effective and fair business with HR policies and welfare systems are often rife with things like nepotism and financial, maybe administrative corruption, and so on and so forth. And they don't generally thrive as organizations. After a while, they sort of kill themselves off. They also operate with a high set of risks, because whilst it may be argued that some organizations, some parts of the world are successful and thrive in certain places, they seldom are able to these organizations thrive for too long. So in terms of the sustainability, the long game, we say. Organizations also find it difficult to operate in more globalized markets where certain minimum standards of business ethics are expected. We've seen that with some organizations in different parts of the world trying to work in other parts of the world. They're finding it very difficult because they have got minimum standards which they can't really operate to in other parts of the world. But as I think it was Socrates who said that truly with virtue comes wealth. So in a more long-term sense, having good ethical work culture in place with a code of business ethics is probably a good idea for longevity of the organization. So what are the benefits also? Organizations become have employees who are more engaged, more effective as sort of the internal organizational stakeholders. People feel that they're being treated fairly, that the customers are respected. They're not being fleeced. They're not being suppliers are not being asked to sort of pay bribes, and the authorities also they deal with are effectively supporting the organization. How does the company then define what is ethical and what is not? We hope obviously that they don't sort of contradict each other. It would be very much easier to have that pluralism where basically what is ethical and what is morally acceptable and what's in the code of business ethics is all correct. But the code of business ethics, which provides by strict religious code, may not create inclusivity to employees who are of a different religious persuasion, and this would create an issue as it would prevent inclusiveness. And we've seen this in the past with maybe gender diversity and also many years ago the sort of the diversity of inclusion of minorities or within certain places. But now this issue is coming to surface now quite a big way with the LGBT rights and this kind of business. So it is a very, very challenging space, I must say. So a code of business ethics also very much more prescriptive set of expectations and performance standards, which more limited room for interpretation. So if you get a gift, let's say, maximum say 1,000 dirhams, which is I don't know, people with us here today are from the puzzle. So around, say typically about $300 or $350 for a gift, and you can't, sort of give 10 gifts of limit of $300. you have to sort of prescribe, to tell people, okay, what can you accept and what can you not accept? Can you accept a little pen with the company logo on it of your supplier, or sort of a sort of latest Rolex or something like that? Obviously, there must be some explanation or some quantification of what you can accept and what you cannot. And a company must define its code of business ethics based on a variety of considerations, which include sort of benchmarking with the best practice standards in other organizations as well, because there is a certain degree of competitiveness, just like in cultural competence, which actually we do a lot of work on in the platform for connected leadership and cultural competence. There needs to be that sort of cultural understanding. And let me stop here and give you an example. I in my role when I was EHS director, I was sent to Korea, to South Korea, to do a due diligence to invest